Welcome to the Upland Nation podcast. Scott Linden here. Glad to have you with me as I help guide you and you guide me through the uplands. Whether you got a retriever, a Flushing Spaniel, or a pointing breed of any sort, or maybe something like mine, the German wire-haired flusher. No. We'll talk a little bit about our progress, but first, let me tell you that Bryan Bilinski will be joining us. You recognize that? Of course you do. How could you forget that name? Bryan is a shooting instructor, gun fitter, dealer of fine guns, avid hunter, and all-around good guy. He is the proprietor of FieldSport Ltd.com in Traverse City, Michigan, one of my favorite upper Midwest states. I'll be asking him all the questions you might want to ask him about those hard shots in the field and maybe even on the clays course. So stick around for a tutorial on shooting with an expert. I'll also tip you to one of my favorite Wyoming chukar and Hungarian partridge spots, and then we'll get some advice and opinions from you as well on the proverbial topic. Still worth carrying a paper map? Yeah. You'll be interested in some of these thoughts. They're all made possible by Sage and Breaker Gun Care products, Pointer Shotguns, Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, TrulockChokes Tubes, MidwayUSA.com, Purina Pro Plan Sport, and High-Vis Shooting Systems. See what you've been missing? I know I have. Well, maybe this has happened to you. You're at 5,000 feet, climbing towards 6,000 feet when the handheld tells you your dog is on point. You can barely see him skylined against the gray on the top of that ridge, way up. So you're, putting the pedal to the metal, so to speak, trying to get up that hill. And you know how it is on some of those hills, 2 steps up, slide back 1. So it takes a while. And he is, well, at least Flick is quivering. His nostrils are flaring, and there they go. Not even close enough for a bad shot. Well, that's what I've been working on lately. Not the steadiness. No, Flick is doing great on that, and I bored you with those details. But on sometimes reining him in and walking him at heel in that big country where we think we know where the birds might be. Yeah, thanks again, Jeff Funky, recent guest on the podcast, for reminding me that, it's okay to put your pointing dog on a lead, or, if you can, not bother with the lead and just heel him along until you get to the birdie spot, ensuring that you have enough time to get caught up and actually take a shot, especially after you're climbing that far. But it works no matter what birds you're after, and I've had it happen on flat ground as well as on hilly ground. So we're working on something that you might think is pretty simple, but it's not, and here's why, in my case at least. When I bring Flick in and get him to walk alongside me, and I use that word walk because I don't want to say heel, because heel means something that sounds a lot like here. I'll go down that rabbit hole some other time. But so I tell him to walk. And usually when I do that, early in his training when he was younger, it meant walk with me a couple steps till I get you pointed in another direction, and then I'll release you. Go hunting again. So that's what he's used to. I got to change that. So now when I get him to walk at heel, I'm adding 10 more steps every time we do it. So he's not learning, or he's unlearning the idea that a couple steps, that's the direction. I get it. Now I'm going to cut out of there. I know it's silly, but it may save me a bird or two once in a while. I asked this question because I am just, in another life I would have been a map maker, a cartographer, because I love paper maps and I love what they do for us, deep down psychologically and also from a practical standpoint. So I asked you on the social media, anybody still carry a paper map, and why or why not? And I was Well, let me just say, pleasantly surprised at the answers. Andy McCormick, my good friend at Legacy Sports, Pointer Shotguns, he takes both. Yeah, belt and suspenders for Andy. He's got an online mapping app and a paper map. Yeah, and it sometimes serves him well. Spread out a paper map for the big picture, especially in camp at the end of the day, reflecting on the day's events and tomorrow's prep. Yeah, boy, Andy, I'll tell you a story about Snake Den Butte sometime. That's how we found out what it was called after I stepped on one. Yeah. Lance Larson, heck yeah. It's a family podcast. Heck yeah. My eyes can't see the little electronic screens very well, and I don't have to deal with the sun's glare on a paper map. Yeah, absolutely. You know, I've got one up right now in the office here because I just love browsing it. It may be a place I've been a million times. It may be a place I'll never go, or most likely it's a place I'm going this season. And, you know, over the course of, 20 cups of coffee and a few weeks of that on the wall, you learn stuff that will only come in handy when it just pops into your mind in the middle of a hunt. Scott LaPlante reminds me that a paper map is a lot more helpful if you bring a compass. And Don's LU pointers, Don, thank you. It's good to hear from you again. Yes, if you can find an up-to-date one. Someday I'll tell you that story as well. When the USGS lands their helicopter at your camp and brings out the map and asks you where they are, they made the map. Anyway, Brandon Murphy, always got to have a backup, absolutely. Jay Knetner always has his atlases in the truck, better view than trying to pan out on a GPS. Yeah, absolutely. Ken Morgan, batteries go dead, maps don't have coverage issues, positively. Chris Ingram, yeah, this is brilliant. I'm not letting my geology degree go to the wayside just because I became a digital editor. And by the way, Chris, you owe me a phone call. I'm waiting for a new assignment from you. Chris is the digital editor for Gundog Magazine. So you've seen some of my work there, and thanks in large part to Chris. Anyway, some great answers, both from a battery power to what I'll just call a nostalgic standpoint. Yes. Oh, here's the last one. John Bowden-Distal. Yeah, I think I got on the third try. Especially for antelope season. His paper maps have owners' names and numbers. Okay, hey, what a concept. Oh, somebody's doing that mobile too. But anyway, it helps him a lot, and I get it completely. Absolutely. Well, our tutorial on maps and compasses is now concluded. Think about it for the future. We got a tutorial on shooting coming up. In the meantime, we're brought to you by Purina Pro Plan Sport. They have concentrated nutrition to optimize oxygen metabolism. Yeah, if you follow sports or sports science, you know what VO2 max is. Well, it's a good thing for your dog as well. It leads to increased endurance during exercise, and who doesn't need that? Number one, it's got a high-protein formula. 30-20 is what I'm feeding these days. Real meat is the first ingredient. And then the amino acids, thanks to that real meat, will nourish the muscles, including the crucial time after exercise to promote recovery. Yeah, so the next day and the next day. That's what it's all about. Learn more about their nutrition and take a look at all the formulations at ProPlansport.com. Yeah, and I'm a gadget freak. That's why I love MidwayUSA.com. Not only do they have lots of stuff for bird hunting and bird dog training, they got all that other stuff. Just got a box from them that if you camp, you spend any time outdoors, or like me, you just love to have stuff around, consider that. MidwayUSA.com. Just got a Coleman propane coffee maker. I can't wait to show it off. That might be the only value to it, but it is so cool. They're an internet retailer of just about anything and everything for shooting, hunting, and the outdoors, and they take customer satisfaction very seriously. Browse the entire website. Take a look at the ammo selection. I take a look at it way too frequently. It's all available for you at midwayusa.com. Well, it's good to have him back since we talked with him last. A lot of water over the dam. So, Bryan Bilinski of FieldSport Ltd, welcome back to the Upland Nation podcast.
Well, thank you, and it's a pleasure to be back.
You know, I learn so much from you all the time, and that's one reason I wanted you to be back on the podcast with us. Other people, too, are really eager to become slightly better shooters, and I mean that for myself. They'll probably become way better shooters. But before we start all of that, let me just, give the short version of your resume. You're a shooting instructor, a clinician, you're a gun fitter, you're a hunter. You have authored a new book, and we're going to talk about that first. Why don't you start with the motivation and more on that book?
Well, the motivation is to thank everyone that's helped me get to the point where I could finish a book on wing shooting and fine shotguns and everything I've learned over the last 40 years. This is the culmination of this book. It's a collection of everything I've written in magazines such as Upland Almanac, which is one point known as Grouse Point, and then also the Rough Grouse Society magazine, Shooting Sportsman, and some other new material that I put in there. You keep learning from people, and there's a lot of time we recycle when we work with a student in the school where the same problems kind of come up. So that's the resonance of this book. It talks about everything that I've learned from people. And I hope it'll consequently allow a lot of folks that'll be, when they read it, say, that's me. That's the guy, and I understand what he's saying about that other person that he dealt with in a shooting school or a gun fitting, from all perspectives.
I love it. Now, just give us the title and where we can find it.
It's called Wingshooting The Art Science. And
how do we get a copy?
Well, I've got a new website coming out within the next few weeks that'll be named FieldSport Press. And when you go to FieldSport Press, you could buy it online. And then as of right now, for the next couple of weeks, all you have to do is call FieldSport in Traverse City, Michigan at 231-933-0767. And during regular business hours, Deb or someone will take your order, credit card, and we can ship you the book. And then there's also a combination. I ran an ad in Shooting Sportsman magazine. I also have a video coming out, and that's the next connection to this combo product.
Well, fantastic. I'll look forward to seeing both over the next few weeks, and should be interesting. What was the biggest revelation you had writing that book?
That I'm not a writer. That's not my background. You're right. I'm writing about what I love.
Yeah.
And that's easy. That's where it just always flowed when I had to come up with a subject matter for the magazines. It always connected to something I just experienced. Like I'm working on a mental plan of my next article in Upland Almanac, and it's going to be entitled "Beware the Man or Woman Who Shoots One Gun." But then the second line of that is, I'm not that guy.
I love it. When I write a book, it's to get a whole bunch of things off my chest. And then I can just walk away from all that. But you're right. What ends up happening then is you keep all that stuff just circles back over and over again, doesn't it? When you're, like you said, when you're instructing.
It sure does. I kind of expect to hear similar questions. I send out questionnaires, and they get, I see similar answers to the questionnaires before a school or a lesson or a fitting. And they, just like what you said, a lot of your listeners are interested in becoming better, more competent wing shots. Well, the number one comment I hear on these at the end of our questionnaires is, I want to be more consistent.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the word, that's the magic word. So consistent boils down to the knowledge of how to achieve proper muscle memory, so that when a bird gets up in front of you, no matter whether you're startled or not, you go autopilot.
Yeah. Well, let's start with that then, because it is absolutely one of the things that most of us never get enough opportunity to develop. And I'll just give you the analogy that I've used over and over again. If you were a golfer, you wouldn't walk onto the course at the Masters and tee off on the first hole expecting to win anything. You'd probably be chased off.
Mm-hmm.
Before you got to that point, you've played 1,000 tournaments. You've hit 1,000,000 balls at the driving range. You've made 1,000 putts, all to get that. Mm-hmm. Our problem is we got to find a range. We got to buy targets. We got to do this and do that. It becomes complicated. What can we do outside of the range to develop that consistency?
Well, within reach of me right now, I've got a very unloaded shotgun in my living room.
Yeah.
And any break, kind of just mental break of anything else I'm doing, I pick up that gun, double check to make sure it's empty. And then I go through my repertoire that I teach in the schools, which is I implement my correct stance, my correct posture, bring my gun to the ready position. I begin moving the gun along a line between my ceiling and the wall. I mount my gun firm to my face. If I have snap caps in the gun, I pull the trigger, click, and then I stay in the gun. 1001, 1002, dismount. There's a book out there called 10,000 Hours.
Ha!
Right? You probably heard of it, read it maybe.
No, but I can relate.
Yeah. One of my students actually sent it to me, and it's very apropos. Well, I just, with a smile on my face, say, how many of us can actually have the time to invest 10,000 hours in shooting? Well, there are a few, but for us who have to make a living, we find, little snippets of time where we can do maybe an hour of shooting at a time here and an hour of shooting time at there. This is where quality is more important than quantity.
Oh, no doubt about it. And I remember learning that back as a musician in the day at the conservatory. Perfect practice makes perfect.
Correct.
So that means a little bit shorter time. I am holding my very unloaded shotgun right now. You can hear it. I just closed it. I'm doing okay. So just for the record, I'm set up. I got a good ready position. There goes the bird swinging across the seam between ceiling and floor. Bang! Stay in the gun.
Yeah, that's the magic ending called follow through. Well, that anchor point under the zygomatic arch is so critical. I mean, number one, you have to have a well-fitted gun to make sense of that. But that anchor point, and there's two sides to the practice at home. You can have your eyes open and you can check your stance, make sure you feel like your posture goes forward, kind of look down to make sure you have a good ready position, check your hand position, left hand comfortably extended out on the forearm of your gun, the right hand wrapped around, safety off, thumb over, close the circuit between the second finger and the tip of the thumb. And then, but as you begin bringing the gun to the face, the gun mount is everything. For the gun to shoot where you look, you have to anchor under the cheekbone zygomatic arch. One of the things you can add to this puzzle is practice your gun mount with your eyes closed. It's priceless. I'm kidding. Because, somebody was asking me, well, why, Bryan? I said, because with your eyes closed, you can't make a bad gun mount.
Huh?
With your eyes open, you're dealing with data. Here comes data. You may be thinking about the bird. You may be lost your concentration. But with your eyes closed, you can go into that quiet state of mind, which allows you to finish your gun mount. Now, how do you get your 10,000 hours? Well, over the course of a season, you can get there just by practicing at home, comfort of your living room, all the ingredients to make you a good wing shot. You just can't pull the trigger on a live round, which we eventually got to do. We have to do that.
Yeah,
I got out and shot yesterday at Cedar Rod and Gun Club in the morning, and the trapper out there says, "Where you been?" I said, I'm doing what I'm always doing. I'm trying to keep FieldSport. Keep the boat going in the correct direction. You deal with surgeries. You're getting healthier, and it was a joy. I mean, my first round, I was a little rusty. But I knew what I had to do. In the second round, I started dustballing targets. So, even 50 rounds later, it started to feel good. The muscle memory is there. It can get a little rusty, and you have to polish it off by shooting targets that you should be able to hit over and over and over and over again.
Well, you just said something that I'm a big believer in, and that is at a sporting clays. I love the game. Used to make a TV show about it. And it's a wonderful game, but so is skeet, and so is trap, and so is five stand, and so is Helise. But when I'm shooting sporting clays with friends, I know better than to shoot those wacky targets that I'll never find in the field. And I'm glad to hear you basically, sounds like, allude to the same thing.
And I have to caution students that come to a FieldSport wing shooting school.
Yeah.
It's going to be gun down, folks. This isn't gun up. And I don't have a problem with gun up, but I do bite my tongue when I have to explain the difference. So gun up, you don't need a perfectly fitted gun, and you'll probably see 90% maybe of shooters on trap and skeet and like this Helise five stand, they'll shoot gun up. That's okay. Here's the X factor. What's your goal? This is a wing shooting program. If your goal is to become a better wing shooter, you better practice gun down. Somehow, starting point, the dog gives you a quick memo. He's getting birdie. Into the ready position you go. In my book, I've got a picture of my pointing lap, Daisy on point. Time to get in the ready position. And then the move, mount, shoot process begins. This is where this is very athletic. Moving, mounting, and shooting is an athletic movement. You have to practice it over and over and over and over again for it to become autopilot. And as you said, go from practice to a permanent level that you always will achieve when you're under stress of the flush of a bird.
Yeah, it's got to be, you used the term muscle memory. It's got to be subconscious, doesn't it?
100%. But we don't get there without thinking. And, and that's what every human being has to do. We have to learn. When we start the schools, we give people study guides that they can take home with them, because there's so many different ways people are going to absorb the data. But if I finish a private lesson, I say, okay, I probably bombarded you, maybe informationally overloaded you with a lot of thoughts and concepts, elements. My guess is you go home and read that study guide again after hearing it explained, and you doing it, it'll make a hell of a lot more sense to you.
Oh, isn't that the truth? As long as there's no pop quiz. I took a lesson, this was a long time ago, from a guy who had coached an Olympic gold medalist. And it was a wonderful lesson, very expensive. We literally shot 1,000 targets that day, which I would never do again. I mean, that's crazy, because after about 200, you're just phoning it in. But he had a questionnaire at the beginning, and he asks everybody, why do you want to learn to shoot better? And I just wrote, because I want to make the dogs happy. And maybe you and Daisy have that same relationship. Tell me about a great hunt you've been on recently, and let's get the juices flowing here.
Yeah. Well, every hunt's a great hunt for me. When you start, you've crested 65, and you start reflecting back, any day is a great day of field. It doesn't mean we have to kill a lot of birds. It's nice to see birds. It's nice to move birds, but I can also can it by going to a shooting preserve, knowing there are birds out there, so I can see Daisy's response, how she works a bird. And then my job, there it is to kill that bird cleanly, to reward her for, what God put her on this earth to do.
Yeah. Tell me about your pointing lab, because, there are some people who've never seen a pointing lab work. I have, and we actually got one point on camera once in South Dakota. But what is it about that breed and that style that you like, obviously enough to have a dog?
Well, I'm going to get you a copy of my book, and you'll see I lead out with a picture of me hugging my first Labrador retriever named Rum Village, Indiana Buck, when I was 16.
Wow.
Daisy's number 9. And so I've had Labradors. I've always had labs. I'm still a lab man. It was the breed, born and raised in South Bend, Indiana. My first hunts were for obviously pheasants out on the farms and ducks. Well, and we jump shot ducks off of creeks, down to the farm. Well, what the heck does a duck always do when you shoot it off of a creek? Falls on the other side, and you never have waders on. You're not going to be able to get through these creeks. So that really stimulated my first need, and that's where a lab became the perfect dog for me. It would go through a creek and up the other side and retrieve a duck and bring it back. And my first, I have this story relating in my book that first pheasant I shot, I lost. I was as excited as a 16-year-old can be. Bird got up, instinctively took the shot. Bird fell. For a half hour to 45 minutes, I'm crawling around on my hands and knees in a wheat field. Where is this bird? Where is this bird? Finally, I realized it was lost. Yeah. And I went home that night and talked to my mom and dad, and I said, I'm never hunting again unless I get a dog, period. And they didn't know anymore. My dad never hunted, but they were supportive. And I saw a sign just a few days later in a local sporting goods store said AKC Labrador Retrievers, hunting and field trial stock. Well, I called that man. His name was Ken Riddle, and went and visited with him, found out he had a nice little kennel of labs, did some field trialing, avid hunter. And so I became hooked right then and there, and I started giving him a down payment of $10, $10 a month for 9 months till I could pay off Buck. And Buck was a puppy when I bought him.
I love it. Well, tell me about Daisy in the field. How does a pointing lab look when they are actually getting birdie and pointing?
Well, the same way they look if they're getting birdie and not pointing.
Okay.
There's a lot of enthusiasm. It's usually a posture that you're recognizing.
Yeah.
And a steadying. I look at their ears. That always tells you, they're getting close. Their ears and their attitude changes.
Yeah. And
you can tell the dog is working scent. As bird hunters, we know there's a thing called a scent cone. And if they hit that you can't train them to do that. That is their God-given instinct if they've had this bred into them. And Daisy she came out of a very good pointing lab in Michigan. And so it's just autopilot, maybe not as stylish as a setter with but she's got a nice high tail. And I've watched I've been to this American pointing lab trials, and there's some beautiful dogs, and they're just things are just I hate to say a little more versatile, but they're asked to retrieve ducks in a hunting environment, and then the next hour they're asked to go over and point chukar out, and they get graded on how well they find the bird and point it. It's to each his own. It seems like everyone kind of gravitates to the short-haired guys, gravitate to short-haired guys, and setter guys like setter guys, and lab guys, etc. But bottom line is we just love our dogs. It doesn't matter what breed it is. We love our dogs.
Yeah, and there is that loyalty, absolutely. I'm on my 5th German Wirehair, for example, and I got no reason to switch, and it doesn't sound like you do either, and that's a good thing. What are you guys mostly hunting out there? Are you doing the grouse thing?
Oh, sure, absolutely. We are in classic grouse and woodcock habitat.
Yeah, yeah.
Within, you don't want to publicize this, but within 10, 15 minutes of FieldSport, you've got 100,000 acres of state and federal lands that we can hunt. So we're very blessed. You can go into the UP and you can hunt hundreds of thousands of state land. Anytime you're hunting public lands, though, you got to become a good steward of knowing what type of habitat birds might be in, and you got to pay your dues. If you're real lucky and you have somebody who's private land, you're even more blessed because the birds aren't hammered too hard on certain properties that are owned by private individuals who develop habitat for grouse and woodcock. This far north, we don't have any wild pheasants. We do have some good shooting preserves, but it's grouse and woodcock and a pretty good duck flight. I hunt ducks with a friend of mine who has some property that they plant sweet corn on. And boy, I'll tell you, sweet corn in early October is it's quite a magnet for ducks.
Oh, don't forget to take a few souvenir ears for the barbecue later that night.
Yeah, well, that's August. We get the good corn in August.
Oh,
yeah.
That's Bryan Bilinski with FieldSport Ltd. and FieldSportLtd.com. You spell limited Ltd. I'm Scott Linden. This is the Upland Nation podcast. You know how to spell that. We'll be back with Bryan for more. I want to talk about that one gun thing, and then I also want to talk about public land grouse tactics next. So stick around, and Bryan, you'll be back in just a moment. In the meanwhile, though, let's talk about HiVizSights.com. Probably couldn't get a better segue than that. HiVizSights.com. HiVizSights.com. See what you've been missing. Everybody has their own philosophy about how our eyes and our head relate muzzle to target. I'm finding that subconsciously, at least, a sight on the end of my muzzle, on the end of my barrel, might be a help for some targets sometimes. HiVizSights.com has a wide selection of various types of light pipe technology, tritium, fiber optic, you name it, they've got it. Their only goal is to help you shoot better. Learn more at HiVizSights.com. Yeah, and I love my pointer shotguns. I'm going to put a high-vis sight on one of those and experiment as well. PointerShotguns.com is where you learn more about all of their models. They got them all, over and under, side-by-side, and semi-auto. I've been really enjoying the beautiful case coloring on one of the side-by-sides I just picked up from them. They got nickel-plated receivers. They've got traditional bluing, and they got all those Cerakote colors. Learn more about the variety of colors at PointerShotguns.com. Oh, after a big break talking about guns and shooting, let's talk guns and shooting with Bryan Bilinski of FieldSportLtd.com and FieldSport Limited in Traverse City, Michigan. One of my favorite places. Unfortunately, I was only there in the winter time. How do you cope with that up there, Bryan, or do you leave for the Bahamas?
A perfect world, you get the heck out of here in the winter. Our winters are about 1 month too long.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. It's one of the reasons Traverse City is the size of New York City. Winters kind of keep the population in check, but winter is what you do with it. We still shoot a lot of clays in the winter. A lot of our 5-stand courses up here are heated. Almost you're shooting out of almost like a trailer.
Yeah.
And so that's nice. Other than that, something like 5-stand, you can get out and shoot, be done in 20, 25 minutes, get back in the clubhouse and stay warm. Not every winter is severe, though, and that's the deals with winter. But in a perfect world, if I could get out of here, for a few weeks in the winter and take Daisy down south, that would always be an objective. I used to love, we we were doing a shooting school down at Wild Wing Lodge, which unfortunately is no longer in business, down in Kentucky. And that was great because you could go to Kentucky in March and still shoot, and hunt preserved quail, just like wild birds down there.
It was a great place. Had a good time there many years ago myself. Yeah. So, anybody who does schools or a clinician of one sort or another is always scheduling those trips for the middle of winter.
Yeah.
Now I know why.
Yep.
Yeah. You talk to grouse hunting, and one of the biggest things that most of us are looking for is we're looking for ways to enhance our success on public land, and grouse hunting public land is almost a science unto itself. When you're out there looking for good stuff, we understand the habitat part of it, what they need in the way of food and cover and that sort of thing. But are there any other things that you've learned? For example, I was at a place I can't reveal even to this day where in the wintertime, they've cut basically paths for snowmobilers, and they make great grouse hunting routes as well. Mm-hmm. Are there any other things, practical applications to stuff like that?
Well, it's nice if you can walk down a snowmobile trail and let your dog work either side. Usually they're in very good aspen habitat.
Yeah.
I'm always a little hesitant to hunt near any place where there's motorized vehicles, such as motorcycles. You better keep an ear out because they're not looking for a dog running through the woods either. So it's you have to be cautious if you're hunting around trails like that. But when I see the guys come in the store and they want tips, the best tip I can give them is called time of day.
Okay.
You just don't hunt all day. And the way you study birds is, I've got a bird feeder out in front of my living room. It's almost, you can set your clock by when the birds come in and feed, your watch, and when they leave. It's such a predictable time. Well, that's the same thing you should hunt grouse by. When they're the most active, when they're on the ground, they're out in search of food, you're more likely to find them than when they're perched up in a pine tree in the middle of the afternoon. They could care less that you're walking around looking for them. They're not going to flush out of a tree because they're not threatened.
Yeah.
So time of day, I still have found, I wish I could adhere to it all the time, but I found the last hour or two of the day is the best.
Yeah, and most times slightly cooler if you're worried about that sort of thing.
Yeah, we have pretty, by the time we get into October in northern Michigan, it's pretty easy to stay. You're going to hunt every day.
Yeah.
The weather will permit. But middle of the day, it can get awfully hot at times, and you just have to be extremely cautious and not run your dogs when it's hot.
Out here in the West, most of our Western birds will have water requirements of one sort or another. I'm not saying they always go to what we call free water, the stuff you can see. Sometimes they're eating it. But my grouse hunting, in large part, and I don't care where I've been the upper Midwest, I've been to the Rockies, I've been to the Cascades and everywhere in between, I seem to find birds in drainages, watersheds. I don't know that it's for the water, though. I think it's for the cover and the food. Have you seen a grouse take a drink?
Personally, no. Never seen one take a drink, but I agree. Whether it's habitat, whether it's alder bottoms, well, those are in wetlands of some sort. It might be that this cover is thicker, but water always seems to be a magnet. And I know a lot of river bottoms and creek bottoms. And it's tough hunting. I did it as a younger guy, and you better be able to slog through because it's not something you're not going on a stroll on a 2-track and letting your dog work. So, you're right. I don't think grouse they can get their moisture from everything they eat, as well as water that's on leaves and things.
Yeah.
But woodcock too everything, you think, well, how could I move a bird here? Well, they move from one type of habitat to the next, and it depends on the time of the season too.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of woodcock, what would the biggest move be from one part of the season to the other?
Well, oftentimes they're high at certain times of the season, and then they're low, and low takes them to more water. It depends how much moisture you get. I mean, you have to be a biologist and a predictor of weather too, and kind of say, well, how much rain have we got, and where will the birds be? Yeah. And it's not that it's a crapshoot, but you just say, I'm taking my best guess, and that's the type of habitat I'm going to hunt. And sometimes you just say, I'm going hunting. I'll do. Most of us have coverts that we return to because they hold birds, and year in and year out until they get too mature. And that's the hardest part. When I moved to Traverse City area, the coverts I hunted back then are now, they're ancient forests.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a tough pill to swallow when you see that, those great spots. But they're doing a lot of cutting, and the best friend a grouse ever had was a chainsaw. If you don't cut that and start regenerative habitat, you're not going to have birds.
Absolutely. Hey, let's speaking of grouse hunting and that sort of thing, let's go to school on what you think is the hardest grouse shot. If you're out in the field and Daisy slams a point, what's the worst thing that a grouse can do when you walk in to flush that bird?
Boy, one of the worst things you can do is see him on the ground.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Oftentimes that puts you, all of a sudden your mind is not right. If you see the bird you want to, in some respects, be a little surprised, but you want to hitch into the ready position. If you anticipate, we got a bird somewhere close by, there's no such thing as an easy grouse shot. Really, how many guys have taken a bang, bang, a bird going straight away from them, and a clean miss. Everybody.
I'm holding my hand up when you ask that.
Okay, yeah. Well, and that's muscle memory shot, but we take it, almost sudden it looks too easy, so we don't finish our gun mount. We don't bear down. We don't really bring that gun firm up to our anchor point, and we got a high head. And 80% of the misses that I've seen in the last 40 years of coaching have been because of bad or incomplete gun mounts.
Yeah, so we're back to the perfect practice.
Correct. Back to that, what you're trying to achieve. And so every shot you take on a clays course that looks like, and I 100% support you, why shoot at a Batu or a Chandelle or some crazy target in transition that really isn't going to replicate anything you're going to see in the field?
Yeah.
When you go to a clays course, we have a lot of nice courses up here that are very woodcock grouse oriented. Our Cedar Rod and Gun Club, Benzie Sportsman's Club, Emmett County. You'll see a lot of very bird hunting oriented type shots. Spend twice as much time shooting those targets and walk away from a Chandelle at 50 yards that you got to shoot at 4 o'clock. Sadly, the game of sporting clays has evolved away from, and I'm not bragging, but the game I brought to the country in the early 80s, every shot back then was meant to replicate and duplicate a field type hunting shot.
Well, it was called hunter's clays in England for a reason.
Yeah, well, actually, that was the debate that Bob Brister and I had.
Really?
When we were on the board. We were on the board for the first Orvis Cup Classic Sporting Clays course or Sporting Clays event that we hosted as a Green Wing, Ducks Unlimited Green Wing fundraiser. Mm-hmm. Bob and I went back and forth, and I was building the Orvis shooting grounds at the time, and I had seen the game of Sporting Clays. He liked the words hunter's clays, and I like the word sporting clays. Well, I won out. That's what we called the first National Sporting Clays Championship. But there's a real tight connection to shooting gun down and hunter's clays. And that's where I say, if a guy thinks he's coming to something that I'm promoting and wants to shoot gun up, I'm okay with it, but it's not going to change your muscle memory.
Yeah.
You're not implementing the athleticism that it takes to move, mount, and shoot. So, in fact, we just held a Cedar Rod and Gun Club side-by-side event called the FieldSport 100. Mandatory, you had to shoot gun down. You had to call for your target in a ready position, and the guys loved it. And it is what Hunter's Clays is meant to be.
Love it. Let's go back. Let's go back to my grouse hunt. Okay, I've got a taxidermied alder branch on the wall here because usually that's what I'm killing. But if I want to quit shooting tree trunks and shoot birds instead, that is the headache. And I've joked about it before. If those guys who invented skeet shooting had gotten it really right, they would have put a whole bunch of telephone poles on the course. So you would have to shoot through them or around them or something. Can you take me to school on how to make more shots that are so crowded with tree trunks? What do I do?
You can't shoot out yourself to, shoot enough to get to the point where you see the bird. You have to realize that grouse shooting is a very, very low percentage game. When I finally was keeping good numbers, I would think that out of every 10 grouse I saw flushed, I maybe got one good shot.
Yeah.
The other 9 were, just quick. It depends which way they go, whether they wild flushed, these classic painting type shots, birds are held solid. That doesn't happen very much anymore. Our grouse, the ones that have survived year after year, they do one thing and they do it real well. They run.
Yeah. They've learned from the pheasants. That's
right. And only the runners are the survivors. Any bird that's in flight, even as Gordy Gullion said in his book, Grouse on the North Shore, it's a threatened bird when it's in flight. Yeah. And we, and God forbid nobody would ground swat a grouse, but every bird in flight, is a potential that we'll get a shot and we'll kill and harvest a beautiful bird. So, there's no easy shots. If you see the bird, boy, count your blessings. And then it's all about focus at that point. Move, mount, shoot, focus. You can't, and it's hard to coach this, but you can't teach people by shooting through trees or brush in a clays course.
Yeah.
No, because if that was the course set up that way, say, okay, we're going to throw these clay targets behind an aspen clear cut, eventually everything's going to get denuded because they're going to,
So we'd be doing the logging for them.
Right. It's not going to. But if you get one good shot out of 10, maybe even 2, you count your blessings. You may have harvested a couple birds.
Okay.
And all is well.
I feel better now. I know one of the best pieces of advice I got years ago on at the RGS National Hunt was, you can't deal with the trees you're going to shoot through, but you can stand in a place where you can at least swing the gun without crashing into a couple trees.
Yeah, you could pick your openings if you think you're heading in onto a potential shot, looking to where you're going to walk next as you get a little closer to the dog, the more give yourself a little better opportunity. This is where barrel length. Everybody's saying, "Oh my God, I need a short barrel to swing quickly in the grouse coverts." And I'll always ask the rhetorical question. I'll say, if you get hung up and you can't make a shot because you're hitting tree limbs, is it the last inch or 2 of the barrel that's causing that?
Yeah, absolutely true. I get it. All right, so I'm walking in. I got a dog on point. My wire hair is on point, and when he's on point, the first thing I want to do is get in front of him really fast because I don't know how long he'll hold. So I'm going to walk up. I think I have an okay idea of where that bird is. The first thing I'm going to do is not look at that place, right?
Shrine, yeah. It's just like your focal point on clay targets.
Yeah.
You don't look at the machine.
Yeah.
Look away. So You want to kind of look out where the bird could potentially first appear, because the bird launching off the ground has got your eyes focused in the wrong place,
and we can't catch up.
No, exactly. Yeah. Now the bird has won. But if you let your gaze come above that area and just soft eyes looking out for the bird, that now the movement will be true. Once what you see, you can get on the line, move, mount, shoot. High percentage of the time, you're going to kill that bird.
So here's the next part. This is the nexus. Everybody talks about, foot position, ready position, all this. You're walking in on the bird. Theoretically, you're going to push the bird into the air. At some point, you need to stop. The bird flies. Your feet may be in mid-step. How do we get to that next point? This has always bothered me. How do we get from walking in on the bird to a good foot position so we can actually execute the shot in the right way, move, mount, and shoot?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's two sides to that question. Foot movement toward a bird is actually a good thing.
Okay.
We teach that in our upland school. We set you up wrong and make you move your leading foot after a clay target in flight. All right. So you're not at that perfect break point, hold point, focal point position.
Yeah.
And that's something an upland bird hunter should practice. Is foot movement is not bad. You don't have to think, well, if my feet are not stable, because you can always move your left foot. I'm right-handed. It's my left foot in the direction the bird's going. And what that ultimately does is help square up my shoulder to the break point, to the kill zone of that particular bird. Another not easy, but it's something you can practice is drag your back foot, land left and kind of pull your back foot up. So you're not moving up and down. You're kind of going lateral with your foot positioning. So as you move your left foot forward, you drag your right. Left foot forward, drag, just a gentle drag. So you're not totally off the ground when the bird flies. You've got you got a good feel that you're on the earth when the bird flushes.
Fascinating.
Yeah,
I love that idea.
Dragging the back foot. I've seen my buddy Dale Tate. We let him kind of teach that, and it's a real nice little ingredient. Left foot lands. Okay, bird hasn't flushed. Another step. Bring that back foot up in a dragging motion. The right, for me, it'd be my right foot.
Well, that's
gentle.
That'll be my excuse to go say hello to Dale the next time I'm down in Central California, because he's done work on a gun of mine on behalf of a buddy to whom I gave that gun. And he can't say enough good about Dale.
Dale he's a fine man. He's been teaching with me ever since Michael McIntosh passed away, and we've been told we sound like two peas in a pod.
I love
it.
We're
We're coaching, but we both have a different way of teaching. That's the beauty of what's one of the elements I like about our schools, that I don't know if I'll connect with everybody, what I say and what I'm trying to help, but you feed off of each other to help that person become better, and maybe they hear Dale say something a little bit differently than Bryan said it. Yep. And it read and ding, bing, bing, bing. Now they've got I call them little golden nuggets.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm sure there are a lot of them in your book. That is Bryan Bilinski, the author of the brand new book.
Yeah, Wingshooting The Art and Science.
There you have it. And available right now. You call FieldSport, or soon to be at FieldSportPress.com. Would that be where we go?
Yeah, well, if you can edit this out, what you said is that if this is going to come out in late July, by then FieldSport Press will be online.
Great. Excellent. So we'll watch for that. And in the meanwhile, one more shooting-related question. When you're at, whether it's you or it's Dale or it's you together working on some guy who he's like the quintessential student, he does what wrong? What is the biggest mistake we make when we're shooting?
The biggest mistake. Well, I think sometimes the biggest mistake is people are too full of themselves. I like to work with someone who's like a sponge.
Yeah.
And is appreciative of and stays with the program. It's not that I've had, sometimes you get people that think they're they're going to tell you what they know about shooting, and it's like, well, then why are you here? If we can help you, we will. But the our normal students, very appreciative. They come wanting to learn. They realize they've got limitations. What I always kind of go back to is, we don't know what we look like when we shoot.
Yeah.
That's where a coach comes in.
Yeah.
I'll say I've got a 3-person lesson tomorrow, and what I'll say to them is, I'm going to put you in the box, and I'm going to watch your every move so that I can send you home with an awareness of what you need to do to become a better wing shot, more consistent. Whether it's your stance, do you understand how to use that? Whether it's your posture, do you get your weight forward? Do you start your gun in a ready position? Do you recognize the value of break point, hold point, focal point? If a average wing shooter steps up there and they don't play targets like real competent, professional level shooters shoot, they're always going to be left wanting. And so in my video, I really pound that element home. I say, what does break point, hold point, focal point really have to do with grouse hunting? We can't tell a grouse to flush when we want it to flush, and where it's going to go when we want it to go, and give us the window we want to shoot into. By practicing with a break point, hold point, focal point program, it's all about the 2 magic words: muscle memory.
Yeah.
That's the key. So, so consequently, you give them all the ingredients so that I can't make you a world-class wing shot in a couple of days at a FieldSport wing shooting school. Excuse me. But I can sure make you aware of what you need to do so you can go home and practice properly. And then, as you said, you anchored it right, perfect practice makes permanent. That's when then you're going to get the benefit out of it.
Well, we've talked this whole time, and we haven't really talked about one of the other aspects of FieldSport Ltd, and that is you are a fine gun dealer. I'm betting some of those guns are new, and some of them are lovingly used.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us, when we get into the fine gun game, are probably saving our cans and bottles for a long time to buy their first entry-level fine gun, and it'll probably be previously owned. If you're looking to buy a used gun from somebody, or we're looking to buy a used gun from somebody, what are the key things we should probably run away from really fast if we see them?
Ooh, that's an easy one. Any kind of problems with the barrels, turn and go 180 degrees the opposite direction. Dented barrels, pitted barrels. Barrels are expensive to repair, and if you do repair, sometimes you make the gun more dangerous to shoot, as wall thicknesses, if you have to hone out pitted barrels. So any gun that's been abused or neglected, I appraised easily a $20,000 to $30,000 Parker that must have been in a chicken coop.
Oh no.
The barrels were the worst I've ever seen, and I had to make them aware of that when I wrote. I said, if these barrels, and they were beyond repair. It was so sad, but that gun was just neglected, and the heirs to that gun would have had a $20,000 to $30,000 Parker, and it wasn't worth much more than parts because of the condition it was in. Hopefully, and God willing, a reputable gun dealer will educate you as to what you are buying. Stock dimensions should be registered on every gun. I get a lot of compliments, more than I can even say, about the information that's on a FieldSport gun tag. Drop it comb, drop it face, drop it heel, cast it comb, cast it face, cast it heel, length of pull, pitch, choke constrictions down to the thousands, wall thicknesses especially on English guns. Everybody wants to know wall thicknesses. Check the trigger pulls. You have to be caveat emptor when you buy a used gun. So hopefully you've got a reputable gun dealer who won't be trying to sell something that's just a bucket of bolts that you'll be disappointed with. As I said something earlier, beware the man or woman who shoots one gun. I'm not that guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, but the piece to the puzzle there that the next phrase is, but beware the man who shoots a well-fitted gun. Okay, man or woman, and that's where. And I spent, I don't even want to tell you how much money I spent in my lifetime on guns that fit me, because I'm not Mr. Average. I shoot a very high comb, somewhere 1 1/4, 1 3/16 at face, for 1/4 inch cast off. Guns like that are very rare to find on the secondary market.
Sure.
So most of my guns that I've had fitted to me, I've had custom made for me, and I've been very, very blessed, or they were close enough that they could be bent. And that's where if you know your ideal dimensions, you want to get a gun that's technically about within 1/4 of an inch of your ideal dimension at drop it face and cast it face, because then most stock benders could hit that, because then that's a 1/2 inch at the heel. It's a lot to move a stock. If it's less or more, as close as possible, between 1/4 of an inch, 3/16 and 1/8, a much easier shot that a stock bender can reach your ideal dimensions. And that's what you have to know going in. How close is that gun to fitting me if I got professional help to make it fit?
And there you have it. Speaking of which, that's what you should expect from your gun dealer if you're going to somebody other than Bryan Bilinski at FieldSport Ltd. in Traverse City, Michigan, by the way. Bryan, man, we could keep going on and on and on. We'll have to do this in a grouse covert sometime instead, because then we'll have something to apply all of our theoretical knowledge to.
Well, what are you waiting for? We got October is on the horizon.
Oh, listen, soon enough, everybody will know what I'm doing in October and November, and it'll be fun, that's for sure. Bryan, we'll talk again. This is fantastic stuff. I appreciate your being a part of the Upland Nation podcast. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and best wishes and good shooting to all those out there. Keep a smile on your face, but most important thing, be safe. Don't ever point your gun at anything you don't intend to destroy.
And we've still got more. I'm going to talk about a couple road trips I've done to Wyoming and where you might want to go as well if you're heading in that general direction for Huns and chukars. Yeah. Among other things, so don't go away. We're brought to you by sageandbreaker.com. New bore cleaning solvent. Yeah, if you got a stubborn barrel or two, yeah, shotguns, that might be just what you need to get that thing all cleaned up and ready for the season. Bore cleaning solvent at sageandbreaker.com. And Breaker is Braker. Yeah, those are dog names. Fred's a pretty clever guy. The range bag is back in stock. Sign up for the mailing list so you don't miss out on future sales and more new products coming down the pipeline at sageandbreaker.com. And TrulockChokes is your choke tube resource. There is so much information on their website, whether it's browsing the gun maker brands for shotgun chokes that you can use. They got over 2,000. If you're looking for sub-gauge choke tubes, they've got a whole bunch of those. If you're looking to tell how many notches mean what kind of a choke that is, they've got identification codes for that. And their FAQ page is a tutorial on choke tubes from start to finish. They've always got a sale or two going on as well. So check out TrulockChokes.com. And you spell Trulock, TRULOCK, TrulockChokes.com. Yeah, it wasn't the original reason to go make a episode of Wingshooting USA, but it became the prevalent reason once we got there, and that is Hungarian partridge. We were actually looking to do a chukar hunt, and we did. And in fact, what was interesting, this all happens near Torrington, Wyoming, and I'll give you more on that. What happens is you'll be in chukar country and you'll find Huns. You're in Hun country and you'll find chukars. We never knew what was going to show up, especially if we were near wheat stubble, for example. Wyoming is the Wild West, and what that means is there's plenty of publicly owned land, And they do have a growing walk-in program, and those are both attractions for wild bird hunters and wild birds. Like I said, we chased chukars and Huns near Torrington, and from Torrington, which is kind of southeast, you make an arc north and west, and you'll find a whole bunch of public ground. Get their hunting atlas online, take a look at it, think about the territory that you might want to hunt, whether it's chukars or Huns. They've got a lot of it. Go on to your online mapping program and get started near Torrington, Wyoming. And that road trip feature is brought to you by Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School. They are all hunters over there, so when you take a lesson from midvalleyclays.com, they know what you're talking about. Many of the things we talked about today, they can do that right there in person. If you are in West Central Oregon or passing through, schedule a lesson. And while you're there, take a look at their inventory of Browning shotguns. They've always got 40 or more in their rental fleet. Try before you buy. And especially if you're looking for sub cages, they've got them at midvalleyclays.com. Well, thanks, Bryan Bilinski. You are a wealth of information. I can't wait to go hunting with you someday. In the meanwhile, if you want to learn more about Bryan, his teaching, his schools, his inventory, and his new book, it's all at FieldSportLtd.com. FieldSportLtd.com. The book itself is now available at FieldSportPress.com. Bryan Bilinski, thanks so much. Thank all of you who comment at the social platforms, always learning from you, and hopefully you're learning from each other. If you left a rating or a review, and I do appreciate that, please do. Thank you. And thanks to our sponsors who make all of this possible. TrulockChokes, MidValleyClays.com, Purina, ProPlan Sport, PointerShotguns.com, SageAndBreaker.com. They're all the folks who make all of this available to all of you. In the meanwhile, I'm Scott Linden. Thanks for listening to the Upland Nation podcast.